What's going on, YouTube? This is Boxingwave, and welcome back to some more boxing content. Today we have I guess, some disappointing news. To many, a lot of people are happy about the news. I have mixed feelings about it. Showtime will no longer be Showtime and Paramount. All right, the parent company of Showtime will no longer be broadcasting any more boxing in general. It's over. Okay. We know that PBC has had a long relationship with Showtime. They've been broadcasting fights with Showtime since 2013. And Showtime for 37 years has finally come to a close as far as broadcasting boxing. They are done. And I believe I read that they're done with Bellator as well. I haven't been following Bellator MMA for a while. I haven't seen a fight on there in a while. But it's over. It's over. And we've heard this for a while. A lot of people have been speculating this for at least a few years, okay? But it's official according to a report. Steven Espinoza, who's the president of Showtime Boxing, said to ringtv.com that it's pretty much over after 2023. They're no longer going to go forward with boxing in 2024. Okay. As far as the scheduled fights like Benavidez and Demetrius Andre, those fights are going to go on. But as far as going into 2024, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen to Canelo and his 3-fight deal with the PBC. I have no idea. All right. I made a video last week talking about this because there was news that was going around that PBC is shopping for a new network to have their fights. And we heard that Amazon Prime was one of the networks that they would possibly go to. Now we're hearing that the Zone is going to be another option as well. All right, so we don't know yet. I really don't know how this is all going to work. I know it's very confusing because we're hearing reports. We get reports of upcoming fights that involve PBC and Showtime fighters. And being that none of these fights have been official, some of these fights have been, just discussed. I don't know what this means. I guess all of these fights are going to be put on hold until we hear where they're going to go from here, where their new home is going to be. So I don't know. These fights still may happen, but we probably, and you know what? I'm sure there's a lot of things working behind the scenes. I don't know when we're going to find out, but this is big news because there's a lot of fighters that are exclusively signed with Showtime or other promoters, smaller promoters under Showtime, and there's the PBC, you know? So I don't know what this means. I don't know what's going to happen. I've said to you guys in other videos that I've talked about, like Showtime and the possibility of them no longer broadcasting boxing matches. The one thing that I've always said is I hope that all of these fighters can find a new home and we can continue getting great fights. That's all I care. I've never been a fanboy of a promoter or a network. Just give me the fights that I want to see consistently, especially because we pay so much money in this sport right here. If you're a fan of football, American football, if you're a fan of basketball, hockey, baseball, whatever, all I know is that I've subscribed to football. I've subscribed to the NBA, and it does not equal close to the amount of money that I put into boxing. That doesn't even involve the events that I go to and watch and the tickets that I pay for. I'm just talking about paying for subscriptions, paying for HBO's, paying for pay-per-views. It's very expensive to be a boxing fan, and I understand it's a very dangerous sport. And I do believe that these guys should get paid, handsomely paid for what they do for a living because it's dangerous. But I want quality fights, and, I've thought about this, especially since the news came out. The news came out probably, today, officially today, but we've been talking about it. And I would like for it to go to the zone. I think that it would be the best option as long as that the budget is right and everybody can put everybody on the schedule, because there's certain weeks, and I don't think the zone in as a whole, I don't want to just say Matchroom, because I know that there are other fighters and other promoters on the zone like Golden Boy. I understand that, and there are fights that are not those two promoters like Boxer. There has been fights that have been on the zone, so Americans can watch. So for people that don't have access to Sky Sports, there have been some fights that's been on the zone. So with all that being said, just go to the zone, simply because me personally, I pay a lot for the zone. It's a lot. The subscription is a lot of money, and I want to get as many fights as possible with the money that I pay, especially that now that they're going to start having pay-per-views on a regular basis. Put some of these fights on the zone. So A, I can get my money's worth with my subscription, and B, and more importantly, we can get better quality of fights. We don't have to hear much wrong side of the street. All right. And I believe that, from what I've seen, there has been working relationships with Top Rank, who's with ESPN and Matchroom. There has been fights that's going on, cross promoted networks. I feel that when it came to Showtime and the PBC, they don't like to do cross promoted fights. You know what I mean? They like to keep everything in house, and most promoters do like to keep everything in house. But there are going to be times where unification matches need to happen, or stars like Tank Davis and Ryan Garcia, Crawford and Spence, Fury and Wilder. There's going to be fights where we're going to need. We got, but there was a struggle for a lot of fights that needed to take place, but we didn't get because they were cross promoted fights, and because Showtime was very, very strict when it came to those kind of fights, especially for the bigger names. Now, I know Showtime has been phenomenal this year. They've given us some great fights, over this year. I'm sure a lot of that has to do with the possibility of they canceling Showtime canceling boxing, or Paramount canceling boxing. All right, but we got great fights this year from Showtime. I told you guys before, and this is why it disappoints me that Showtime is gone, because I love the presentation of Showtime. I love all access, just like HBO. I thought HBO was number one. I thought Showtime was number two. I know DAZN gives us quality fights. I know Top Rank and ESPN and all these other promoters out there and networks out there, they give us good fights throughout the year. But one thing about Showtime, I love the production. I love the presentation. I've always liked the commentary. I don't always agree with the commentary with any network, but I'm gonna miss Showtime. They give us a long history of fights that I grew up watching. I'm gonna miss them, just like I miss HBO. I miss HBO. I miss the face-offs that they had, the sit-down face-off that they started, or at least I started seeing the face-off, the sit-down face-offs with HBO. I miss the 24/7s, of the bigger fight, like the Mayweather fights and stuff. I miss watching that. I miss watching the all access with Showtime. But I will admit, even though we got good fights this year from Showtime, I've always said I hate the lack of a library of Showtime. There are very limited amount of fights. That's all Showtime has always been like that. It's been like that for some time. And I pay for Showtime to watch the fights. Yes, there are certain shows that I've watched on Showtime, but I pay for Showtime for boxing. And there's not a library there. They'll pop up with some fights from past fights with upcoming fights, but fighters that are coming up, that are scheduled to fight. But for the most part, the library has always been very, very limited. And sometimes I like to just chill. I like to sit at home, and then being that I pay a subscription, sometimes I want to go back and watch a fight on Showtime or DAZN or ESPN, Top Rank, whatever. I want to go and look at the library of older fights. I don't want to have to always search on YouTube and find that it's not there to be seen on YouTube, or it's just a lower quality recording of the fight. I want to be able to go back to pay-per-views that I purchased on Showtime. I'm not able to do that. It's like I'm renting a pay-per-view, and I shouldn't be renting a pay-per-view. I should be able to have access to fights that I pay for to go back and rewatch it. I shouldn't have to wait until the next week on a Saturday evening to re-show a fight that I paid for the previous week. So I do believe that as far as the availability of fights, it was definitely very limited, and I was disappointed with that. But as far as the actual broadcasting of a fight, I did enjoy it for many, many years. You know, there's so many classic moments, classic fights over the years watching Showtime. You know, I'm gonna miss it. You know, it's made a lot of careers. A lot of people made a lot of money from it. And I know a lot of people like to complain about Showtime and the PBC specifically because of cross-promoted fights not happening. And I've complained of that over the years. But I still am going to miss Showtime because I grew up on it. It's been there my whole life. So I am going to miss it in that regards. And, you know, I just want wherever these guys land, I want it to work. All right. It does scare me that some of the major broadcasters like Showtime and HBO have canceled boxing altogether. I honestly think it has a lot to do with the politics and the money. You know, it's just a lot of nonsense going on. A lot of these fighters are asking for so much money, and I'm sure that, you know, I don't know the numbers, but from what I'm seeing, you know, and I'm not a dummy, you know, it looks like the money is just not worth it. And that's the only reason why it's probably being canceled, because the money and the money that's being invested to put on these events, they're probably just not making it back. And it's just not worth it. The push, and then all the ridiculous, you know, issues when it comes to trying to make the quality fights. You're not making quality fights, and it's having an effect on the money that's coming back. You know, I'm sure for the major fights like Tank and Ryan, yes, they are generating a lot of money, but week by week, they're probably not. And it has probably a lot to do with the poor quality fights. You gotta give us quality fights. This risk reward thing is getting ridiculous. We got guys now that are becoming undisputed on a regular basis now. You know, when we went so many years without having any, now we have 4 sanctioning bodies, and they're making it work where fighters are becoming undisputed, and that's great. That's a beautiful thing. But we got to continue having quality fights. You know, I mean, we are paying a lot of money, and I know that the sport is dangerous, but you got to give us quality fights. So wherever these guys go to, and this message is for ESPN and Top Rank. This message is for the Zone. And another point I want to bring up, as far as me wanting it to go to the Zone over like an Amazon Prime, I just prefer. I know, like Amazon, and now we heard the news with Peacock. Peacock, they just strike the deal with Boxer. They were supposed to broadcast this fight between Dan Aziz and Joshua Buatsi this Saturday, all right, which I was getting ready to do a breakdown for. And I have wasted time doing a film study on that this past week, because now they're not even fighting. I don't know if the event is going to be canceled altogether or not. That hasn't been confirmed yet, but you know, a lot of these networks that are basically mostly based on movies and TV series, I would prefer, and I know they're trying to broaden their, you know, audience by doing this, but I would prefer to put it on a sport network over these film and series networks where boxing is not a priority. I don't want to have to continue to scroll down to boxing to look for the boxing session. I was complaining about this recently when Canelo was fighting Jamel Charlo, and I had to go to pay for the pay per view. I ended my Showtime subscription recently, right, this past month, and I subscribed to Paramount, which has Showtime. But if you look at it, Showtime is like at the bottom. You got all these series and all these section drama, film, action films, TV series, documentaries, and then you get to the bottom and you see Showtime, and now I'm looking to pay for the pay per view, and I go to find out that they're not even showing it, the pay per view. They're not even promoting the pay per view on Paramount. And this is Canelo Alvarez we're talking about here. I have to go back to the Showtime app in order to order the pay per view. So even though, I know when PBC first came out and they were on everything, they were on networks that I never even heard of. At PBC for a moment in the very beginning, they were on Fox, they was on Showtime, they was on NBC, CBS, all this stuff, Bounce, they was on Fox Sports 1, they were on everything. All right, and it seemed like they were trying to bring boxing back, and again, I loved it in the beginning because they were giving us quality fights on network television. But they went right back to doing what they've been doing because the money, they probably wasn't generating the views and the money, and they weren't consistent. And I feel like you have to lose a little bit of money. You have to keep it going. And the price tags of these guys and their purses kept growing. It was growing without the quality of fights. And there's no way that you can sustain this because guys are getting, boxing is funny. It's tricky. Because guys, fans, newer fans and older fans, the newer fans, they get introduced to certain fights and they have a good time watching a fight, and then they watch another fight and it'll be like a bullshit stoppage or a bullshit robbery. And then people turn away from boxing. And this happening with the new fans, the old fans that are still sticking around. A lot of the old fans already left. But for the new fans, the few that are still sticking it out, they getting frustrated. So wherever they go, I would hope that it's on a sporting streaming app over a TV series movie app. It's working with football. I've seen football on Amazon Prime and all of this stuff, American football. I've seen other sports on non-sport streaming platforms. But these sports are much more popular than what boxing is now. ESPN is going to always have boxing because ESPN covers all sports. They just have to. The Zone sporting streaming service, unless the Zone altogether folds because of financial reasons, they are always going to broadcast boxing and the few other sports that they have because they are a sporting app. There's not many of them though, and a lot of them are like third stream, apps or apps that are just not as big. I have Fight TV. I subscribe to Fight TV. I know that Triller tried to do it. It's hard to maintain boxing because it's expensive. The purses are large. And you look into the crowd, it is no one there in a lot of these crowds. And I think part of that has to do with promo. I think some of these fights that happen are happening in the wrong areas at the wrong times on the wrong weekends. You're putting up fights up there there are certain weekends where there's no boxing on or very little of it. And they'll put a smaller card on a weekend of bigger fights. Like this past weekend, Golden Boy actually had a card with Miguel Burchell that was on at the same time as the ESPN card with Janibek, as the what's the other fight that went down this past weekend? I can't remember right now. But again, it's just the planning of it. They got to do better. The promotion of it. Listen, have some of these fighters. If you're a Cuban fighter, have a fight, have an event in Cuba so they can generate more money in the box, as far as the ticket sales at the gate. Yes, you have to move them around and get them to fight in different areas so people become fans and come out for boxing. But sometimes when you're trying to promote a fight and build up their name, get people in the home crowd to be familiar with them. They shouldn't go so long without fighting in their home cities and stuff. I just think that they can do better at planning. Wherever PBC is going to go, they got to do better at giving us quality fights. If you guys going to pay them millions, make sure they're fighting some of the other best fighters in the world. This duck and dodge and trying to plan on fighting guys at the worst time, just to get an easier win that you wouldn't have gotten. It's just too predictable now. And you got guys like myself, content creators. You didn't have this before. This not the days of the magazines. Okay? Those days are over. We have social media now. People are aware. New fans are aware of what's going on behind the scene. They even when people sound ridiculous, and sometimes they sound extremely biased when it comes to networks and promotions, they're still more educated than they were before. Because before I started my channel, I vaguely followed the politics of boxing. There was no YouTube of people talking about Showtime did this deal with this, and then I get enough money, and this guy ducked this, and this promoter said this and that. It was none of that. You only had like maybe threads of it, on forums and stuff where people would talk about this. This wasn't a major thing. Now anyone can just upload videos, and people are becoming aware because this is the source for a lot of people's information. People go to Instagram, people go to Twitter, people go to YouTube to know what's going on. Some of these guys, like myself, content creators, are more famous than the fighters themselves. And the fighters do look at our videos. They all do. So we're in a different time and people are aware of the games. And we're getting tired of the mismatches. We're getting tired of what we saw with Chamel and Canelo. It's going to happen from time to time, but we want good fights. We want great fights. Sometimes the matchups are great, but the fight doesn't turn out good. But sometimes some of these matchups are terrible. And most of us know it beforehand. And then when we pay the money and we get a poor fight, it make people turn their back on the sport. So with PBC and for the rest, because I'm talking about a lot. I know I'm all over the place because I think this is an issue that is a boxing issue. It's bad enough that we have the sanctioning bodies involved. It's bad enough that people are popping dirty and fights are getting canceled. People are paying to travel to see certain people fight. And when you book a hotel, you book a flight, all right, and you buy tickets to travel. I've done it plenty of times. And then a fight gets rescheduled and there's a postponement, especially a week of a fight like this one with Buati and Aziz, is an issue. There's just too many things that happen to cause a fight to get canceled. And people are dishing out a lot of money for this bullshit. Meanwhile, in other sports, you are scheduled to play that team. You are scheduled to compete. Even sports like tennis, where it's 1 versus 1 or 2 versus 2, it's scheduled. It's on the schedule. You have to compete in order to win the championship. You can't say, I'm going to go with this team instead of this team. You can't be the best team and just say like, oh, I'm going to continuously pick this team because we know we can beat them over and over again. It doesn't work in these other sports, and this is why people continue to watch. Boxing is so versatile. not versatile. Uh, Boxing is not versatile. It's I have a brain fart right now. Anyway, you guys know what I mean. Um, it's just hard to stay. It's too inconsistent, and you never know what you're gonna get. And sometimes I want to see and travel events, and I get scared that it's gonna get canceled. I almost went to Spencer Pacquiao, got canceled. I almost flew out there to go see it. You know what I mean? Volatile. That's what I was trying to say. Anyway, um, I hate to see Showtime go again, but in this move, I hope it's the right move. Let's not go to another streaming service if it's not the Zone or ESPN or whatever, because we are just hearing every few days we're hearing it's another network. So it could be ESPN, it could be the Zone. We'll know when we find out. But whatever it is, if it's not going to be a major boxing network next, just give us the right fights. And sometimes that involves cross promoted fights. Because we don't want to lose. If PBC goes to Amazon Prime, we don't want Amazon Prime to have the issue that Paramount and Showtime had with boxing, or HBO, or any other network that decided to cut off ties with boxing. Fox. We don't want that to happen. And we keep seeing a repeat. Whereas NFL, you know where to go for the NFL. We go to Fox. We know where to go for the NBA. We go to TNT. It's there. It's going to always be there. Even if the numbers are down, it's going to be there. They'll just figure out a way to get the numbers back up. Whereas boxing, it seems like, yo, we're cutting the cord on this sport. And you know why? Because we don't know what it's always some bullshit going on. All right? So I guess that's what I wanted to talk about. Showtime it's official. Just give us the best fights, man. And if you're gonna, I don't think pay-per-view is gonna stop. I thought at one point it was going to stop. It's not going to stop. So if it's not gonna stop, give us the right fights. What I'm starting to see is once a fighter gets pay-per-view, it doesn't matter if the pay-per-view was a success or a failure. You become a pay-per-view fighter. That doesn't make any sense to me. But yes, the fighter is getting paid more, but they're getting less visuals because people are not going to pay. They're not going to pay. And the diehards that don't think it's worth the pay, they're just going to stream it. It's too easy to stream. It's too easy to stream fights. All right. And then, and I also brought up the thing with the influencers. They're doing the numbers. Jake Paul, Logan Paul, KSI, Tommy Fury. They're doing the numbers. And that's a problem. It's not a problem from them. It's a problem for the real boxers. Because now they're not even on the undercards of these influencer boxing matches, events. So they're not even getting visuals, on bigger fences. They should be, but they're not. They're just loading it up with other influencers. So Poppy and Slim. Who are they? I don't know. They're not fighters. So anyway, I guess this ended up being a rant, but goodbye to Showtime, and goodbye to HBO. Still talk about HBO a lot. Man, it's just like, wow. It's like I knew this was coming, but I'm still shocked by it because it's just like, damn. People are cheering, but at the same time, it's just a bad look for boxing. It's like, damn, no one can stick with us. No one wants to really deal with us long term. And I say us because I feel like the fans, it's us too. Because we're supporting the sport. We're putting money into the sport. All right. Anyway, I'm out of here, man. Again, subscribe to the channel, man. I'm out. Peace.